Good evening. Welcome to Legacy Battle. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel and check out the Facebook group page. We want you to join that as well. Please contact us in the comments section if you want to sponsor an episode. I'm Michael Adams, the creator of Legacy Battle. Here with me tonight from the Gridiron Battle Zone, Brian King, Penn State Collegiate All-Star, Kevin Adams, and a guest panelist today. He's a former caddy, so he knows tonight's topic pretty well, Stephen Adams. And our special guest tonight, he's considered one of the best putters of all time. He has 3 putting records out there. Fewest putts in a golf tournament with 93. He set that record. He had 18 for 18, which is just outstanding. He's been a member of the Champions Tour, the Nationwide Tour, and of course the PGA Tour, where he has 3 PGA Tour wins and over 24 top 10 finishes. And be sure to go to KennyKnoxGolf.com, where you can purchase Kenny Knox clubs, accessories, sign up for lessons. Pretty sure I saw that on there. And if you go, I found his YouTube channel, get you some golf tips, help you get rid of that slice. So a lot of golf videos on there will help you work out that swing and especially work on your putts. Ladies and gentlemen, PGA alum, Kenny Knox.
Hi, Michael. How are you? Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
It's the first applause I've had in a while.
Well, as always, we're going to have a Q&A after the debate with Kenny about his career. Tonight's debate, I'm totally ready for it. I've got my Ben Hogan shirt on. So Arnold Palmer versus Jack Nicklaus. Just golf royalty. You can see them behind me there, of course. So we're going to start out with the early years. Let's start out with Arnold Palmer. Kevin, why don't you tell us a little about Arnie in the early years there?
Yeah, definitely. Arnold is a well-known name from where I'm from, actually where all 4 of our panelists are from, Pittsburgh. He was born in 1929 over near Latrobe, just outside of Pittsburgh. Palmer's father had actually given golf lessons at the Latrobe Country Club. And gave Arnold his first set of clubs when he was actually 3 years old. He learned most of his game from his father, who was the greenskeeper at that country club. Palmer would later become a caddy at that same course when he turned 11. You know, when you're a caddy, I mean, you pick up a lot of information from players and stuff like that. As you're going along, you learn a lot about the game. You know, Palmer soon developed his own distinctive game. He created a style that would last his whole playing career. He had a swing, though it was ugly at times. It wasn't your conventional swing, but it was very powerful. He had a lot of power in his swing. His quick method of play brought him millions of fans throughout his career. His father gave him advice when he was younger. He said, get the right grip, hit the ball hard, go find the ball, and hit hard again. So he took his father's advice, definitely put it to use. Many say that he helped save golf. He brought it from, the upper classes where, golf was kind of, it wasn't really the everyday man's sport. And he turned it into a spectator sport for the common man. He would go on the course before and after members would arrive at the Latrobe Country Club, and he would play rounds. He'd be practicing when he was a kid. He started playing the older boys at age 8. Was consistently beating them. And they were, 12 years old and older. And then in high school, he began winning tournaments very easily. Like, it wasn't even a challenge for him. In the 4 years in high school, he only lost one time. He won every match except for one in high school in the 4 years. He also won 3 Western PA amateur titles. And in 1947, he took a scholarship to Wake Forest, where he attended college. Dominated the collegiate field also. At one point, he did leave. Thank you for his service. He joined the National Coast Guard in 1950, and then he came back in 53, and he didn't lose a beat. Picked up right where he left off, and he actually ended up winning the United States Amateur Championship in 1954, and then later that year is when he actually turned pro.
Yeah, and he left his senior year of college because his mentor actually was killed in a car crash, and that really upset him. And he left. He went to the Coast Guard, and he was also selling paint. At that time, he was a paint salesman to help pay for the amateur game that he was in. Stephen, so you hear that about Arnie? You got some things in common with him. You were a caddy. You're also a member of the United States Coast Guard. So I mean, obviously from a service standpoint, we know what that means to be in the military in America, of course. But as a caddy, give us your perspective. What is he actually learning from those other golfers?
So some of the things I learned from golfers is, and I hate to say this, it's not always about hitting the ball as hard as you can. There's a lot of finesse in the game. Another thing I've learned is if you are golfing with somebody who knows the course knowledge is a huge aspect for any sort of golfer out there. They'll be able to give you advice as to where you should land the ball. Make sure you don't aim for the green, aim short of it because it'll just roll right off because they're quick greens, the slope of it. Learning things from people like that is huge. Even not as a caddy, just as a regular golfer. Some of the things I've learned best are actually from old guys. I hate to say it. They go out there, they take these nice, easy swings. They put it maybe 150 yards, middle of the fairway. I'm over there trying to crank the ball, and it's 2 holes over. I look at them and go, what am I doing wrong? There's plenty of things that you can learn from them. But that's about it.
Kenny, it seemed to come natural for Arnold. Like he just picked it up. He's automatically good. I'm sure it's a lot harder than that in real life. So maybe walk us a little bit through what, it took for you to just become as good as you became.
Well, basically, when you start out at 9 years old, like I did, it was a whole new ball game for me. Loved baseball, was my favorite sport growing up. All sports were great. I had 3 older brothers. And so golf just came pretty natural for me. We had some junior clinics at the country club I was at in Columbus, Georgia, growing up. Charlie Harper was a really nice teacher, but I really didn't get that much instruction growing up, just a clinic to get me going. And then it was really pretty much left up to me to go out there and learn how to play golf. And the way I really learned how to play was watching my great heroes on the television on Saturday and Sunday afternoons, and trying to replicate their golf swings and learn from them on what to do and what not to do. And so, but when most of the kids were at the swimming pool during the day, I was out at the practice green, chipping and putting, working on my short game, learn how to hit bunker shots, learn how to hit chip shots and different shots around the green. And I would play. We had a great group of kids when I was growing up in Columbus, Georgia. So we had a lot of good competition, which I think is very essential to learning how to compete as you get older as well. Even at 12 years old, we were out there playing for nickels and quarters. And so it was good. It was a good way to pay my way through the summer at 12 years old, so I could earn enough money to buy my first car. But no, we had a good time. I could buy some ice cream or something like that. We'd have fun. But it was the country club setting in Columbus was a nice place to grow up with a lot of junior golfers. And of course, we had the Southern Open in Columbus, Georgia as well as the Southeastern Amateur, which was one of the largest amateur events in the country at that time. All the best players, Crenshaw and Kite, and all those guys would come to the Southeastern Amateur. And so we had a chance to check on them. And we had, great amateur players that came out of Columbus, Georgia as well. And then my family, we moved to Tallahassee, Florida when I was 16 years old. And so basically just kept going what I had learned from Columbus as far as playing with my teammates and just learning how to hone my game and just never let anybody beat me, basically.
Very good. Brian, why don't you start with Jack's early years for us? All
right. Yeah, Jack Nicklaus. Jack Nicklaus, he come out of Columbus, Ohio, and he started golfing when he was 10 years old. Shortly afterwards, he started working with golf pro Jack Grout, who was one of the better golfers at that time. Age 12, he ended up winning the Ohio State junior title, and he went on to win 5 more of those titles. At age 14, he was able to get his first tournament hole-in-one. In all, Nicklaus ended up winning 27 events in the Ohio area from age 10 to age 17. He also became the first golfer to win the NCAA championship and a U.S. Amateur in the same season. So tremendous beginning to the career for Jack Nicklaus.
What I had found very interesting on the course and some things outside the course, but looking back at the beginning where they came from, is a lot of times stories that we don't know about these guys. And I just think that's a really exciting thing. Kenny, we got Jack and Arnie behind us. Was there one that you maybe looked up to a little more, or, one of these guys, your idols maybe?
Well, back in those days, I mean, Arnold was the king, like I said, and then Jack came along about when I was in 1965 is when I started playing golf. Arnold was the first guy that you really, he was the guy the guy with all the charisma. And when Jack came out, he was more, physique wise, he was a lot heavier and maybe not as sharply dressed and all those things that Arnold had, and didn't have necessarily the charisma that Arnold had at that time. However, Jack's image changed dramatically. He had the same management group, IMG, International Management Group, out of Cleveland, Ohio, started managing Jack as well. And so the great manager that they had, Mark, I can't think of his last name right this moment. Maybe one of you guys know that. But I'll think of it as we go. That's one of the problems you have when you get a little bit older. And so he managed them quite well, manager time. Of course, Jack was Arnold was the world traveler with his airplanes and Lear jets and things like that. And Jack was more, he would limit himself to the amount of tournaments that he would play because he wanted to be with his family more often. So he would only play about 20, 21 tournaments a year, whereas Arnold would play quite a few more than that and would play around the world. Mark McCormick, by the way, was the IMG, the head of IMG at that time, the great manager that Arnold and Jack both had, Mark McCormick. And he's very well known for all his contributions to the game of golf. But they were two different type personalities, in my opinion. And I had some great experiences with both of them. More Jack than Arnold. Arnold was a little bit older, obviously, but I had, it was fun to play golf with those guys and see, how they did things. I remember the first time I did see Arnold Palmer, who at that time was definitely my hero. He was larger than life, even though he wasn't a tall, strapping man. He had unbelievable features about him, and literally I thought he was almost like a gold statue when I first saw him, and so it was, I always stuck my foot in my mouth every time I saw Arnold. It was just I was always just dumbfounded and starstruck, I guess, when I saw Arnold. Now with Jack, it was a little bit easier because I don't know, maybe because he was a little bit younger, I don't know. But I was fortunate, I was able to spend a lot of time with Jack and play a lot of golf with Jack. So maybe we were just better friends than Arnold was friends to everybody, with everybody. Jack was more, at that time, he was the world's greatest golfer and had surpassed all of Arnold's records that he had. And so, but it was good to get to know both of them. But I spent a lot of time with Jack and got to know him much better than Arnold.
Stephen, a lot of equipment has gone through your hands through the years. The clubs that these guys were playing with back in the 60s are a lot different than what they play with today. So how good would these guys be playing with today's equipment? Would they be able to compete with the let's say the Dustin Johnsons and the Tiger Woodses of the world, in your opinion?
I don't know if you could really call it competing. Whenever I think they'd still be blowing them out of the water, because back then you're right. Wood clubs, you're not getting the distance. You don't have the impact zones that today's clubs have. So you definitely don't have the sweet spots, that the clubs back then did. So I think if they were playing in today's game, they'd be even better than they were back then, which that's really saying something.
Yeah. because if you look at their records, a lot of them still stand today. So imagine if they got these clubs that can hit the ball 400 yards and specialized balls like today. So, Kevin, let's move into personal accolades.
Real quick, sorry, but
Yeah,
just wanted to add one thing, just kind of piggyback off what you were just talking about. I mean, Palmer's average drive was about 269 yards back then, and that was 8th on the tour for distance-wise. I mean, nowadays, people are driving 120 yards past that. But with Palmer's strength that he had, like, he easily would probably be driving the same distance, maybe a little farther. He would actually topple over sometimes because he'd hit the ball so hard. But I wanted to point out, too, that for Jack Nicklaus's early years, he first met Palmer when he was age 14. And Palmer was actually 24. It was at I believe it was the Ohio Open. And Nicklaus had said he was watching Palmer on the driving range and saw Palmer just cranking like 9-iron shots. And he went into the clubhouse and asked, who is that guy on the range? And the guy said, that's our returning champion, Arnold Palmer. And the kid was like, wow, like Nicklaus was like in awe. And later on, Nicklaus was like, he would come out and say, was I ever really in awe of Arnold Palmer? Probably not. So he wasn't, I mean, he probably did look up to him, but, when he got older, he didn't want to admit that.
well, these guys were good friends. We'll get into that later, of course. But just to add something on that distance before you go into the accolades, Kevin, Nicholas told a story. I believe it was actually at Arnold's funeral. Told the story how in 1963, the two of them both drove a ball 330 yards, and that was, outstanding for that time period. So they could definitely hit the ball. So Kevin, go ahead. Start out with Jack, okay?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we already talked about his early, career when he was growing up as a kid, going into college. But this man has won 18 major championships, 73 wins on the tour, which is 3rd all time. He won 9 on the European Tour, 3 on the Australia-Asia Tour, 10 PGA Tour champions. He has 6 Masters titles, 5 PGA Championship titles, 4 U.S. Open titles, and 3 Open Championship titles. I mean, this man's career is, besides Tiger Woods, I mean, he's probably the best golfer, with Palmer up there too with him. He's had many accolades. He got World Golf Hall of Fame in 1974, PGA Tour leading money winner 8 times, Player of the Year 5 times, and he's won many other awards. He also received the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2005 and a Congressional Gold Medal in 2015. I mean, his career speaks for itself. I mean, he has many awards. He's done many things off the course. You can't say enough good things about this guy in his career and in his personal life.
Kenny, that's something that comes up a lot of times nowadays. Is Tiger surpassed Jack? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I certainly think Tiger has had almost an equal career as Jack had. I mean, Tiger also didn't play many more than 20 events a year. So he won a lot of golf tournaments for a limited schedule like he had. But I've got a lot of comments about the questions that were raised earlier. Jack, in my opinion, I was playing with Walker Emmett at Scioto back in 1982. And Walker was the head pro for Jack Nicklaus at Scioto, where Jack grew up. And he was showing me the places that Jack was driving the ball when he was a teenager. And he was driving par 4s. It was unfathomable, how far he could hit the golf ball with equipment that we had to play with back in those days, especially what those guys had to play with. And going back to the first time Jack saw Arnold hit a golf ball, he actually heard him before he saw him because of the noise that Arnold was making with the golf ball coming off of the club face. And that's much like what people say about Tiger Woods when they first see or hear Tiger hit a golf ball, is the way the ball sounded when they first heard him. And I remember when Tiger first came out on tour, we had an exhibition match in Quad Cities, and he was out driving me with the 2-iron, and the noise, it was incredible how far he could hit the golf ball. And so I did manage to take him to the 8th hole out of 9-hole match, and he and Andrew McGee went to the last hole, and Tiger beat Andrew on the last hole there on the 9th hole. But it was a fun match, and it was a good memory for me. But just there's so many great memories about what those two gentlemen did in the game of golf, the ambassadors that they were for the game of golf, and the standard that they set in how to handle yourself. Arnold always told everybody that got to know him is make sure that people can read your autograph. It's very important that they can read your autograph, and always look them in the eye when you talk to them. And he would always drop a little things like that along the way to help the young guys to improve their image on the tour. And Jack, of course, never turned down an interview in his life, and Arnold never turned down an autograph in his life. And so I don't think anybody's ever done more for the game of golf than those two gentlemen have. And of course, Arnold was known for the guy that we all owe. We should be paying, if he hadn't already had so much money at the time, we should have all been paying him a percentage of our checks because of what he did for the television revenues and the money that was brought into the PGA Tour through sponsorships. And everybody wanted to be associated with Arnold Palmer and then Jack Nicklaus.
So, and with Jack, some more records. I mean, he has the most top 10 finishes at Augusta with 22. And he also has the record for most cuts made there with 37. Set a record at the Masters, 1965 Masters with a record of 271. I mean, that's a pretty good tournament.
Let me get 30 seconds real quick here.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
I did a little bit of math on Jack Nicklaus's statistics for majors. He had 56 top fives in his career, 73 top tens. So out of the 164 matches that he was in, that was for top five, 34% of the time he took top five. I mean, that's a tremendous percentage. And then 45% of the time he took top 10. So pretty much half the time when you turned on a major on TV during that time, you're going to see him finish in the top 10. That's just a tremendous rate. I mean, compared to I've looked at some of the other guys, some of the other golfers, and that's up there with the all-time greats.
That's an incredible stat. Yeah, absolutely. He was so big. He was on Time magazine back in 1962. Which at that time period, if you're on Time magazine, that's a huge accomplishment. Kevin mentioned the 73 tour victories and the 10 tour championship victories. But he's got 20 international victories as well. Something I like to look at is golf is a very pressured sport. A lot of pressure playing golf. So I like looking at playoff records. He's 13-10 with his playoff record. That's pretty good to be above 500 playoffs, because sudden death, that's one-on-one and everybody's watching. So it's definitely a tough event to do that. So let's move on to Arnold and his personal accolades. Brian, you want to start that one out?
Sure. I mean, Arnold, he hit 7 major championships, so that's pretty good. He ended up with 67 PGA Tour wins. That's just 6 under Nicklaus. Top 5, he was able to get 26 times in the top 5. Top 10, he was able to get 38 times in the top 10. Now, as far as those percentages I just referred to, his percentages were significantly lower than Nicklaus's. We're looking at 18% for top 5 and 27% for top 10. But he did have a streak of 26 consecutive cuts made, which was very impressive. He had a top 10 streak of six majors in a row of being in the top 10. And he won the senior major 5 times. And then he was also maybe even a more commercial type of legacy than Nicklaus. he had the Arnold Palmer tee, that big endorsement there. So as far as from a popularity standpoint, he probably has the edge on Nicklaus in that regard.
Yeah, and his playoff record is 12-9, so he's above 500 on that as well. Kenny, I wanted to ask you, because I know 1999, the Buick, was it the Buick Southern you were in?
1990.
Sorry, yeah, 1990, yeah. Buick Southern tournament. You went into, I believe it was a double playoff, correct?
A two-hole playoff.
Two-hole playoff, yes.
Yeah.
So what's going through your head when something like that's going on? Like, what are these guys looking at when they're in their playoff holes?
Yeah, so that was I believe that was my first playoff on the PGA Tour. Jim Hallett and I had tied and went into a playoff starting on the 10th hole, which was a short dogleg right at Green Island Country Club, and we both hit drives out there. I hit first, and I hit it about 12 feet short of the hole. And he hit next and hit about 6 feet of the hole. And so I felt like I had to make that putt to extend the playoff. And I buried that putt, which was a great feeling. And then I'm saying, well, now that I've made it, there's a good chance I'll win the tournament here. But my mindset was I had already won 2 tournaments up to that point. So I kind of knew what to expect as far as winning golf tournaments. But I didn't look past that moment, and he knocked his putt in to go to the next hole, the 11th hole. It was the toughest hole in the golf course, and so it was a dogleg left, and then the green was back over to the right, and we both hit pretty good drives. He knocked on the green. I hit it about 20 feet to the left of the flag with a 5-iron, and the greens at Green Island were very grainy greens. I'll never forget. Of course, I grew up in Columbus, Georgia. That's where the tournament was, in Columbus, Georgia. So I used to caddy in that tournament. I caddied there 3 years in a row when I was 14, 15, and 16 years old.
Home field advantage. That's not fair.
Yeah, you're exactly right. There was tremendous advantage there. And we played high school matches out there and different inter-club matches and things like that. So I did know the golf course a little bit. But he missed his putt on the second playoff hole, and I had left to righter with the grain. So I thought I missed a putt. I hit a good putt. I thought I missed it low, but somehow it held its line and caught the bottom lip and fell in. And so that was my – and I'm 500 in playoffs. I won that playoff, and then I lost the playoff the following year in 1991 at the Michelob in Kings Mill and to Mike Holbert. And that was pretty much a playoff that should never have happened. But it did happen, and it was kind of in the dark, and that's not an excuse at all, because I actually wanted to go play in the dark because I was literally thinking that, Mike wore glasses and they were dark glasses. And they I was thinking in my mind, let's play here before, right at dusk, because it may affect his vision. So I was looking for any advantage I could get. I was 21 under par for the first until the last 9 holes, and I shot 2 over par in the last 9 holes and shoot 19 under par for the championship. And I bogeyed the last hole. So I didn't have the momentum going into the playoff, but I felt like it was an advantage to play at that time of the evening. And I ended up hitting a bad drive. I made bogey in the hole, almost made a putt in the dark, but missed it, and he made a nice putt to win the championship. So playoffs are tricky, and you look at a great Jack Nicklaus or Arnold Palmer, you think they should be 20-0 in playoffs, because just the intimidation factor alone would eliminate their competitor. But playoffs are so different, and it is 1-on-1, and you're not playing the rest of the field. So anything can happen in playoffs. And I remember, I believe it was Lee Elder that took Jack Nicklaus on about a 9-hole playoff one time, and I'm pretty sure that Lee won the playoff. But one of the records that were not mentioned was how many times Jack Nicklaus finished second place in major championships, and I believe that was in the 30s. I mean, he really racked up a lot of second place finishes. And of course, one of the most famous ones at Pebble Beach in 1982 when Tom Watson chipped in on 17 and then birdied 18 and beat Jack by 2 shots. But anyway, that's a phenomenal record there in and of itself, is to finish second. But those two guys, they had 2 different ball flights. Arnold was a more penetrating, boring type shot, a flatter ball flight. I mean, his drives probably didn't get over 75, 80 feet high at its apex. And Jack was a much, higher ball flight with a soft fade coming down. But Jack had busted out there pretty good. I've got some great stories on both those guys.
Steven, should we be measuring these players by their majors or by their total tour victories? What do you think is more important?
Honestly, I don't think you can really measure it because they're 2 different players. Like as was mentioned, one plays a lot more, one plays a lot less. So can you really compare them in that sense if you're looking at them all versus just looking at the majors? So yeah, that's tough call. Me personally, I'd say more majors because that's what a majority of them are going to be playing in.
Okay. And something I forgot to mention earlier with Jack, and I think it's important to point out, he had polio when he was 13, and he overcame that. And, that affected a lot of people back in the day, and that's a huge thing to overcome. I mean, obviously we have COVID out here right now, vaccines for that going on, but everybody was getting the polio vaccine back in the day. And to have that at such a young age, I'm sure that was a stressful time for him and his family. So Kevin, anything you want to add on the accolades?
I mean, Arnold Palmer also got the same 2 medals that Nicklaus got, the Presidential Medal of Freedom, like Congressional Gold Medal. But you had mentioned the playoff record. I actually saw where Palmer was actually 14-10 in the playoffs, playoff rounds. But I mean, as far as kind of touching base on the question you asked, Steven, yeah, I mean, obviously people remember the major championships more than they remember you just winning like the Honda Classic or something. Like the major championships stick out to people, unfortunately. I think when you're looking at these 2 golfers, because they're household names, like very well, renowned golfers, biggest names in the sport. Like you also got to look at the overall picture too, I feel like, of what they've done for the sport as well. Shouldn't just go based on just wins also.
Right. And I look at it too. I mean, I know how important majors are. I get that. The green jacket, of course, is
green jacket, gold jacket.
Green jacket, gold jacket. It's one of the most famous things out there, obviously, the green jacket when it comes to golf. But what makes those courses or that particular tournament any harder than the other tournaments to win? So yeah, you want the majors. I get that, but I think those individual victories at the other courses are highly important as well. So I'll just throw that out there. This is golf's greatest rivalry, so it's hard to determine who's better, at one thing or another, because we're talking all-time greats. It's our Gretzky Lemieux if you're looking hockey. It's our Brady Manning if you're looking football. This is the golf one right here. It's as big as it gets. So let's look at just real briefly at the team play. Brian, I know you had something on the Ryder Cup.
Right. Well, yeah, both Nicklaus and Palmer both had 7 Ryder Cup. Were both part of 7 Ryder Cup winning teams. 1969 was a very memorable Ryder Cup for Nicklaus, very famous one and very controversial because he actually was in a playoff with Tony Jacklin, and he ended up he shot over on his eagle attempt, and he went ahead and he putted his eagle attempt or his birdie attempt in and made it, and he picked up Jacqueline's ball and conceded Jacqueline's putt, which would have tied it up and forced another playoff. He conceded that, and the British, they felt like this was a very nice way of showing sportsmanship. Just saying, hey, let's end this. Let's end this as a draw. But the Americans, Sam Snead in particular, was very angered by this and felt it was just ridiculous. Why would you want to, give away the chance at a win? Because there was an off chance that maybe Jacqueline misses that putt, and you continue on. So, but Nicklaus, he was great in his Ryder Cup. So was Palmer. And then getting into the World Cup, Nicklaus, he had 7 World Cup wins, and Palmer had 6. So they were both part of many, many championship teams in team play.
If we're going to talk about team play, I think it's important to mention that these two actually paired up for doubles golf a couple times. They won the team championship together in 1966. That was playing together for the very first time. They go out and they win the tournament. I mean, in 1966, who wants to take on Palmer and Nicklaus? And then they won again in 70 and 71. So, that's pretty good.
Right. That 1966 one, they actually won that by 13 strokes over their opponent. So, I mean, they just smoked them, just blew them out of the water.
Kenny, in those team games like that, like, what is like the difference in maybe the thought process going into that than a regular playing individual type round?
Well, first of all, you got to pick a really good partner. And I think they both had really good partners. But that's the first rule of team competition is make sure you get a good partner. But you got to have. It was kind of unusual that they did pair together because they had 2 different type of games and 2 different personalities. Jack was the methodical, high percentage golfer, and Arnold was let's just call him a swashbuckler or however you want to call it. He would go for broke the chart. I mean, he has golf courses named after the Charger at Bay Hill, and he was the Charger. He was the guy that came from behind. He was the guy that would never give up. He was the white collar guy from Latrobe, and Nicklaus was a guy that just played a different game than everybody really. I mean, and I don't if Jack had the equipment that these guys have today that we can play today, I don't really think anyone could have ever beat him, other than the fact he did have one weakness, and that was his chipping was not the best part of his game. And it was by far not the best part of his game. But the thing is, he hit about 15 greens every round, and he had to chip the most on par 5s for his third shots, So, but as far as competition, I think the fact that they paired together, they were such good friends, even though they were such competitors. Arnold's Army and Fat Jack. When they called him Fat Jack when he came out because he was competing against everybody's favorite player, Arnold Palmer. And so, for them to pair up, I think that's the reason they did pair up was the fact that they wanted to show that what golf was all about, and as well as having the same manager, that helped too as well. But going back to the concession with Nicklaus and Jacqueline, that was such an important moment in golf that they actually built a golf course together and named it the Concession. And so it's a very good golf course down in on the southwest part of Florida. And so, but it was all about getting the 2 world's greatest golfers together at the time. And I find it hard to believe that they would even play in the Walt Disney World Team Championship, to be honest with you, because they both played limited schedules. Arnold played more, but Jack would play such limited schedules. But I think it was a great idea. I remember when it happened. I loved it. I mean, your 2 favorite players playing together, and nobody could beat them. You had the king and the bear, and so it was a great thing for golf. And I think that's what Jack did for golf, and Arnold did. Jack was always Arnold was so great at promoting golf and such a great ambassador that Jack had his own way of promoting golf, and that concession to Tony Jackson was one of them. And he really wasn't concerned about winning or losing so much as the sport of the game. And Jack was always, having lost the major championships 30 or more times, he was always the most gracious loser ever and the greatest winner ever.
I think oh, go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, real quick, just to kind of jump off of what he said about Arnie's Army. I want to say it was the Oakmont Country Club, one of the rounds when Nicklaus and Palmer were facing off against each other. Palmer actually had later out came out and said that him and his caddy actually said that the way that the fans were treating Nicklaus during that actually made them feel uncomfortable. So Arnold didn't want the fans to do that to Jack during the rounds, but they like Kenny said, like they harassed Nicklaus like crazy. And like you said, Fat Jack, that was one of the things that they would call him and try to distract him. And they would hold up signs like saying, hit the ball here, and they were off in the rough. So, I mean, they definitely went after Jack, especially in his hometown when he played at Oakmont. But Arnold was against that, and him and his caddy did speak out against that, said it made him feel uncomfortable.
I think they just wanted to play together because they were such good friends. I mean, these guys' wives were even friends. I read a story. I think Arnold had said it that when him and Jack would get into maybe like a little argument or fight with one another, it was their wives who would like reel them in and be like, come on, you guys are friends, So they had a really, really close relationship, and we haven't seen that in other debates that we have had. Obviously, show not too long ago, we had Sidney Crosby versus Alex Ovechkin. That's just a rivalry on the ice. They're not friends off the ice, Manning and Brady, they seem to get along, but I'm pretty sure they're not close friends like these guys were. So
yeah, they were just in that recent golf tournament with Mickelson and Woods.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, for charity, absolutely.
Michael, let me tell a quick story if I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'd like to tell the story about 1987, which was my second Masters, and Jack and I played practice rounds in the Masters and all the major championships pretty much. In 86, he was gracious enough to let me play with him. And it was either 87 or 88, I'm not sure. So Jack and I and Greg Norman were going to play a practice round at Augusta. And I was hitting balls, getting ready to go out and play. And usually Jack and I would play Greg Norman and somebody else, another one of his friends. And so as I was hitting balls, I heard this applause, and I looked back and I saw Arnold walking through there with a sweater draped over his shoulders, kind of tied at the bottom, with a cigarette hanging out of his mouth, and just that charisma that he had, and the crowd was going crazy. And I said to my caddy, I said, "Boy, I've never played with Arnold, but it'd be great someday to play with Arnold Palmer, before he gets, where he doesn't know who I am or whatever." But anyway, he wasn't that old. I guess he was probably 56 or 7 at that time, probably. And so he's 57, I think he was, or 58, which is younger than I am now. So, but anyway, at that time, I thought he was an old guy. But about 5 minutes later, Jack came over and said, "Hey, Kenny." I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Listen, so-and-so dropped out. Do you mind if Arnold joins us today?" And so I said, "Well, that'd be fine with me." And so I got all excited, got nervous and everything, and we went to the first tee. And so, like I said, Jack and I would always play Greg Norman and somebody, so I'm just assuming it's going to be that way. Then we got on the tee, and of course, Jack had just won the Masters the year before, right? And so, he was still pretty good even at 47. And so we all looked at each other and said, "Well, who's going to play who?" And I went, and Jack says, "Well," he looked at Arnold and said, "Hey, the old guys are going to play the young guys." So that was, we switched it up, and it was a lot of fun. We had a great day, and I know that I really hated it when Arnold stopped because I'd run into the back of him. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it was such a thrill to play with Arnold Palmer because I knew Jack pretty well at that time, and I was kind of used to playing with him. But to play with Arnold and ask him all the stupid questions and stick my foot in my mouth every time I opened my mouth around Arnold was was very embarrassing, but I didn't care because it was just like that little puppy following that big dog around all day. So that was a great story for me and great memories.
Nice.
That's excellent. All right, before we go into our vote, let's break out tonight's trivia question. Got to be a member of the Facebook group to win. Previous winners are still ineligible, so if you know the answer, just put it in the comments section in the Facebook group. In the movie Tin Cup, what was Roy's shot total on the 18th hole on the last day of the U.S. Open tournament? What professional golfer was part of the trio he played with? And what club did Roy play an entire back nine with during the first qualifying round? So if you got all three answers, we'll get that prize mailed out to you. All right, let's move on to our vote. We're going to pick between one of these legends here. You know, Kevin, even though you're in, last day Tiger Red, I'm coming to you first. Who you taking and why?
Two of the greatest golfers to ever play the game. You have one that basically put golf on the television map and, made it the sport that it is today. And then you have another one that came in and then dominated and broke all of Palmer's records. Well, I don't know if it was all of them, but most of the records. But, I got Palmer said that when he lost that U.S. Open victory to Nicklaus for the second time in 5 years in 1967, that was the biggest disappointment of his life, pretty much. And I love Arnold Palmer. I love his drink, and he's a hometown boy. But unfortunately, Nicklaus, he's definitely got the hardware to put himself on top. So I'm gonna have to pick Nicklaus.
So I look at this as, in my opinion, Jack is the greatest golfer of all time. I think he's better than Tiger. Maybe had Tiger's career not hit that bubble years back, maybe he would have surpassed him. But in my opinion, it's still Jack. Jack is the best. But that being said, the show is Legacy Battle. The legacy of Arnold Palmer is greater than that of Jack's because he, as you said, Kevin, is the one that put golf on our TVs. Jack took the ratings up even more, of course. Their rivalry took the ratings up even more. But Arnold was really the one that he was a national icon. I mean, everybody knew Arnold Palmer. He made golf. He took golf to the next level. Same thing Tiger Woods ended up doing, 90s, took golf to another level, of course. So I'm voting for Palmer. Steven, you're up.
So you mentioned legacy, right? And you are right. I mean, Arnold did make himself a household name. However, Palmer comes and he breaks most of his records. So right there, he's also leaving behind a fantastic legacy in the golf world. So both of these men left fantastic, legacies behind, just in different senses. But honestly, I got to go with Kevin on this one. I got to go with Jack.
Okay, Brian.
Well, one thing that Nicklaus was quoted as saying was that their rivalry got to the point to where folks weren't really always worried about who won the tournament. They were worried about who did better in the tournament, Jack or Arnie. Just to give you an idea, like how important this rivalry was. The rivalry itself lifted golf up. I mean, yes, Palmer started it, but I don't think that Palmer gets to that same level if he doesn't have the rivalry with Jack. And then when you look at the statistics, that sort of thing, it's heavily in favor of Nicklaus. So I'm going to go with Nicklaus on this one.
Okay. Kenny, who are you taking?
Okay, here we go. So Arnold Palmer was known as the king, right? So much like Richard Petty was known as a king in NASCAR, Arnold Palmer was the man that set the standard. He's the guy that was the greatest personality, the greatest entrepreneur. He's made golf what it is today, in my opinion. Had tremendous records, had more fans than anybody around the world. Definitely more air miles than anybody else besides Gary Player. And so you got to put him right there. But much like Richard Petty, you had Dale Earnhardt and all the other guys come along, and to beat his records. And so Jack Nicklaus was, without question, the greatest golfer to ever live. And it's just a shame that that Tiger Woods did not get a chance to play golf with Jack Nicklaus when he was in his prime, because I think it would have been a great match when they were both in their prime. They could both slash it out of the rough and with accuracy into a pin from 180 yards, which is the reason they won as many majors as they won in British Opens and U.S. Opens and PGAs. Obviously, there's no rough at the Masters to speak of, but that was a golf course that was won more on carry than anything else. And Jack and Tiger could carry the ball better than anybody else. Arnold had the fans behind him, and I think the fans carried him along the way so often. And that devastating loss at the Masters, a devastating loss he had at Olympic Club in San Francisco, the playoff with Billy Casper, when he blew a 7-shot lead on the back nine. Arnold lost some tournaments he should have won. Jack lost a few he should have won, but Jack won more tournaments. So having said all that, Jack Nicklaus was the greatest player to ever live, and I don't think Tiger is going to beat him out. And frankly, as much as I like Tiger and admire his golf game, I hope no one ever beats Jack Nicklaus for greatest golfer ever.
There you have it, 4-1. Jack Nicklaus beats Arnold Palmer. Nice job, guys. All right, let's move into our Q&A with Kenny. We're gonna ask him a couple questions. Kevin, you got a nice grin on, so why don't you go first?
I'm just happy because I actually beat you this time.
Okay.
But so no, Kenny, I don't know if you've seen any of the videos online of the different types of golfers. It's kind of like a comedy type thing where, like, you got the angry golfer that like throws his clubs, and you got the one that makes up excuses and stuff. But that being said, golf, I feel, is a very highly mental game. Like, if you're not in it mentally, like, you're going to make shots that just really make you upset. So kind of go through, like, how would you prepare for like a tournament coming up? Like, what would you do leading up to the tournament starting?
Yeah, so it's what we do. We're professionals. It's our job. It's what we did, or what I did, not what I do now. But it's all about routine. Your routine is very consistent. You don't want any inconsistencies in your life. You basically trying to eat the same foods all the time. You find something that works, you stick with it. But the learning how to calm your mind is the key factor to winning championships. And we all talk about getting in the zone. No one can ever be in the zone all the time. But I think that's one reason that Jack and Tiger won as many tournaments as they did, and they're two greatest golfers ever, is because their ability to focus when the time came. That, not to mention the fact that if whoever was leading, they looked on the leaderboard and saw those two guys coming after them, they would tend to falter down the stretch. And Jack, I know, won a lot of golf tournaments from behind, and I believe Tiger's won a lot as well. It's a little easier to actually come from behind than it is to be a front runner many times. So you really have to stay focused. Anything can happen in golf. A bad break where you think you've hit a perfect shot and it buries under the lip of the bunker, or hits a sprinkle head, goes over the green into a ditch or a creek or something. I mean, there's all kinds of things that can happen. You have to be prepared. I'll never forget when I won my second golf tournament. I was coming down the last hole with Gil Morgan, and I had a one-shot lead, and we both hit nice drives. He put his second shot in the right bunker, and I hit my shot about 30 feet short of the hole, and So I'm thinking, at first I'm thinking, okay, I got this. And then I said, no, listen, this guy's a great bunker player. He can hold it out. He could do anything. Well, he blasted his ball out on the French, and now he had a 20-foot putt. And I'm thinking, now I got this. All I got to do is 2-putt. And then I said, no, you got to keep focusing. You got to keep fighting that mental thing. And so I hit a putt up there about 5 feet short of the hole. And lo and behold, he makes his putt. But in the meantime, I had almost lost the Honda Classic the year before because I missed a short putt on the last hole. So I never let my mind wander away from, no matter whether he makes his putt or not, I've got to make this putt. And so when he made his, I literally had to make it to win the golf tournament. And so I did make it. I won the golf tournament, didn't have to go to playoff with a really fine player and so that's the bottom line, is the focus.
Brian, go ahead.
Well, Kenny, you're known for your superior putting ability. How were you able to develop that part of your game? And how did you get it to such a high level?
It's really very interesting because when I was a junior golfer, I won a lot of golf tournaments in my age bracket and things like that. And of course, went on to play college golf at Florida State and win tournaments. I think it's a mindset of your mind overcomes maybe some flaws in your stroke and you just basically learn how to will the ball in the hole, never want to make a bogey. And so that's pretty much the way I learned how. And then when I got on tour, I was not a good putter at all. And I really struggled with my putting my first 5 years playing the tour. I would get my card, lose it, get my card, lose it, get my card, lose it kind of thing. And I was not known as a good putter. And I was actually a better ball striker than I was a putter when I first came out on tour. And so finally, I was playing a practice round with Forrest Fessler in Abilene, Texas in 1984. And he was using a long putter. So he had it anchored and he was using that long putter back when it first came out in 84, 85. And I said, let me just feel that. And I felt the release. I felt how the putter would release. You'd anchor it with your left hand, you'd release it with your right hand. So I started stroking the putter that way, when you would release it with your right hand. And I started making putts. And that's how I started putting. And then in 1986, I won my first tournament. And I putted great. I putted really well that week at the Honda Classic. And so it's just one little thing like that that can actually teach you how to do something you were not able to do in the past or had never really done in the past. And then, of course, I went on to win. People say, how do you only have 18 putts in a round or eight putts on 9 holes? I said, well, I was a very good chipper. So if you chip the ball close to the hole, if you make your first putt close to the hole, you're tapping in a lot. It takes a lot of pressure off of having to make those 3, 4, 5 foot putts. And, like Steve Mellick once said on the air, the two things that don't last are dogs chasing cars and pros putting for pars. So you want to have those short putt, par putts. And that's going to help build your confidence too. And when you get the birdie putts, I did lead the tour in birdies one year until the final tournament, which was the tour championship. And I was 31st on the money list, so I didn't get in the tournament. Scott Hoke passed me on that. And I was not known as a good ball striker, but I would go for the flags because I was such a great chipper putter. I'd either have it close to the hole and have a birdie putt, or I never had to worry about getting the ball up and down because I could really chip and make the putts.
Steven, go ahead.
Well, unfortunately, there, Brian took my main question, but no, you mentioned a big thing is routines for golfers, and I know most golfers, especially me, we have a really bad shot, and then it tends to affect us for the next couple shots. So what would you recommend to average golfers, would you say, to kind of forget about that last shot and move on?
Right. So the routine is ultimately important because it basically you learn how to calm your nerves, first of all. And so the routine is good. You develop a good routine, not one that's very long, but one that suits your personality. Whether you stand behind the ball, take practice strokes behind the ball, or swings or whatever, you have to find what really works for you. I hardly ever took a practice swing in the fairway. I would get, but I would have a routine before I hit the golf ball. And with putting, I always had a certain routine that I would do just to calm my nerves, to prepare my mind, and then to, take the deep breaths in through your nose and out your mouth to get oxygen to your brain. Because no matter what anybody says, everybody's going to be nervous, and you have to learn how to deal with it properly. And so when you can get the oxygen to your brain, then you can think better, and you're more clear on that. And so therefore you're focused. Now, as far as just getting up and wailing away at it, like I tell my amateur partners, pro-am partners, basically just swing hard in case you hit it, because it's just, they have no clue what they're doing most of the time. You obviously get some good players that want to try to beat you in the pro-am, which was always fun. But learning how to play golf is way more, and I teach a lot of lessons. I've given 600 lessons last year. And so I teach a lot of lessons, mostly junior golfers, because that's where my passion is to train them and teach them what I learned and what I know about the game of golf, and how I can get them golf scholarships and get them a lifelong road of being able to play golf, and the journey that they'll be going through, because there's so many things in life that you can relate in golf as well. And so that's what I would probably do if I had to give advice, is find out what you're good at, whether you're a CEO of IBM or if you're a CEO of the Custodians of America. It doesn't matter what you are. Everybody does something good, and if you can correlate that with your golf mindset, then I think you can be successful in overcoming a lot of bad shots that you might have.
So we'll get you out of here with this question tonight. I'm going to take it back to, you mentioned earlier, the 1986 Honda Classic.
Yeah.
So you shot an 80 one day, and you're the first ever Monday qualifier to win on the PGA Tour. So I was maybe tell us a little bit about that tournament and how you could win shooting an 80. That's amazing.
How much time do we have? Yeah. First of all, the average score that day was 79.2.
Oh,
the world's
okay.
greatest golfers. The wind was blowing steady 30 miles an hour, and the temperatures were in the low 50s, high 40s in South Florida, believe it or not. And so I was leading the golf tournament. I shot 66, 71 the first two rounds, so I had to lead the golf tournament. So obviously I was nervous, but I was hitting the ball great. I shot 38 on front nine, which was a really good score with the way the wind was blowing. I mean, a 75 that day was really an exceptional round of golf. 72 was a low round of the day. Mike Reed and Clarence Rose shot 72 that day. Nobody broke par that day. And so, and then on the back nine, I was still playing pretty good. And so, but then I started stumbling a little bit coming down the stretch. And I made double bogey once the cameras came on Saturday on the 14th hole. The cameras came on. I was in the front bunker, and I bladed it over the green and made double bogey on the hole. And then I started trying to just get in survival mode there. And I was actually playing with Tom Weiskopf that day. He shot 87 that day. And so Tom Weiskopf's, well known for his game of golf. And so it was a very difficult day. Actually, after the round, I shot 80, and I was still in fourth place in the golf tournament. And so the next day when I was waking up, I was hoping that it was raining so hard or something that we couldn't even play that day, because I didn't even want to go back out there that day. And it was just crazy. So, but when I woke up, it was a beautiful sunshiny day. The wind was blowing. It was still cool, still, sweater or more weather. Went out to the range and had a late tee time, next to last off. And I was hitting balls, and I was still hitting the ball good. I mean, I had it right in the groove. I was really hitting the ball very, very well. And I mean, there's a lot of things that went into it, but I'll never forget walking from the practice tee to the putting green. Chichi Rodriguez stopped me, and hey, Pards, how you doing? And I said, doing great, Chichi. What are you up to? He said, hey, listen, you can still win this golf tournament. And I was like, wow, thanks, Cheech. I appreciate it. That's awesome. And so then I went over the putting green and I started practicing my putting, and Hubert Green was on the putting green. Well, he had missed a cut, but he was on the putting green on Sunday afternoon at 1 o'clock. And he says, Kenny, former Florida State player as well as myself, he says, you can win this golf tournament. And so my mindset all of a sudden started tracking on, maybe I can win this golf tournament. And I went out and kind of got off to a decent start. I parred 1 and 2, then I birdied 3, 4, and 5. And so now I was back in the lead in the golf tournament. And so just that quick it happened. And then I just put on, I had some good things happen on the 7th hole where I hit a bunker shot and it went through the green and went down in the hazard. And now I was forced dropping the ball back in the bunker and trying to save double bogey where I dropped the ball. And then as I got over the ball, I would waggle once, said, just make it. Waggle twice, just make it. And the third time when I took it back, I said, just make it. And I splashed it out. It came out perfect and went in the hole for a bogey. And that one shot right there pretty much gave me all the fire I needed to just go out and win the golf tournament. Ended up shooting 70 that day and beat a lot of really, really good players, really great players. So I was very, very fortunate to win, but I had a lot of things happen that week. First time I'd ever played max fly golf ball was that week. I got 9 holes in a practice round, and that was all. And first time, my first PJ Tour event with a set of pink copper beryllium I2s that week. The combination of the golf clubs and the golf ball were a perfect combination for the way the wind blew that week and the weather we had. So it was a great week for me, and it set the stage for the rest of my career. And so it was a much shorter career than I wanted, but it was 6 really good years, and then the rest of it was all struggle stuff.
We want to thank you for your time and for joining us tonight. It was an honor to have you here and talk about some of the good old days. I want to remind everybody to check out KennyKnoxGolf.com, get all your golf accessories on there. It's a fun website. I've been on there, and obviously that YouTube channel is help you work on your putts. Lots of good tips on there. So also remember to join the Legacy Battle Facebook group and subscribe to our YouTube channel. So thank you and good night, everyone.